Okay, folks, this is a little supplement or bonus, however you want to look at it, to the previous video on how to do the med texturing. Um, I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with the High Sierra Fly-In or the Dead Cow Stole races. And if you're from Nevada like I am, and you know that we have a lot of dried up alkali lake beds around here, this is this is not uncommon to see with all this dirt and dust, and it's almost impossible to have a shiny aircraft after you've done a little bit of flying. Um, this is some pictures that come off the internet of the Dead Cow event. As you can see, when they do their turnarounds and stuff, they get stir up a lot of dust. Here's another picture. Quite a bit of. It's hard to tell, but there's very little shine on this aircraft, and all the oil that's been coming off the bottom of it's full of dirt and dust. So these are things that you want to look at if you're going to do any liveries that cover that type of thing. Again, in general, just the coloring is dusty. There's not a whole lot of shine to the aircraft. Here's the tire texture treatment that you can see. This is a real aircraft. Couple more here. You can see all the dust on this aircraft. Of course, we don't have any aircraft yet that's got the cowlings off on it, and you see all the dirt around this engine, but you can certainly see it here on the tires and on the back of the fuselage, a little bit coming off the wings up here. I noticed there's a little bit of dust buildup around the vortex generators up on top of the wing. Things like that make your aircraft look more realistic. Let's see, old Henry's, his never seems to get dirty other than just dulling down the shine on the paint job. I've attempted to do that on several aircraft. The first off is this is the the Wilga. My terminology is bad this morning. This is a little more difficult. It's a metallic aircraft, bare metal, and to achieve the effect of a bare metal aircraft, the comp file has to be adjusted to get your metalness, reflectivity, and so forth. When you start adding dust on top of that, you get to a point where there's a little bit of compromise, where you go from a metal look to just gray. And some of that's in some places might be totally realistic, but it gets hard to distinguish, and it just doesn't look right. So this is kind of a compromise. I've got the wheels done. I've dulled down the shine on the overall the fuselage. So just to give you an example, this is the Maul. What would be a normally nice shiny aircraft. I've more dust buildup on the back on the tail surfaces. I'll show you a little bit. This is done with a gradient fill. The wings again, I tried to come off the vortex generators up on the top and get some reality into that. If that is even a reality thing, maybe I've got a little bit too much. For my taste, it was fine. Looking at it from the front, again, the tires might be a little overdone. You can see where I've got the dust here on the vortex generators coming off of it to try to make it look reality, at least in my world. This is the Husky. I also did one with the Husky, not so much up front, but you can see it tapers back in the back with a lot of dust in the back. Make sure you get the tail wheel, maybe a little bit build up around the hubcaps here. I haven't adjusted the caps yet. I could go in there. Again, you're dealing with metalness here. You get to a point where it no longer looks like metal other than just painted gray. So you have to play around things there. Let's see. This is Anov's livery for the mall. I've adjusted the same. I've done the same thing here. Dulled up the paint, tire treatment, so forth. A little bit up on the vortex generators up here. Here's another picture of it up in flight. You can see I've kind of adjusted it up here. This guy's a little tricky. I'll tell you why in a little bit, because this livery area is done with a decal, and so trying to get a matchup on the decal and the actual painted surface on the wing, that was a little tricky and difficult to do, but it's doable. You'll see it here in a little bit. Here's a solid black fuselage that I did, and you can see the transition from I'm still kind of gray showing up towards the front, get dark, a lighter towards the back. There's a couple areas that could be pointed out, like up around the light fixtures here, the screen over the lights. I could go in and adjust that, but if you figure that area is underneath this protective shield, that might be realistic, and then again, it might not be. So just showing you some examples of where I was at to try. I might have a little bit too much here on the side of the wheels. This was probably pictures of the early stages, because I've got little areas like here that the dust didn't get over. There was a decal there or something that I didn't quite pick up. Anyways, just things that can be picked up. I haven't. This particular happens to be the mall, and it's going to be the same for aircraft. I prefer on this to work in Photoshop or in 2D. I get varying degrees of success when I try to do a gradient fill in Blender. I just as soon go and do it here. All this plate is for doing color changes. This was my parts layout that I do for selecting parts. I like to go in and just take a bucket fill and fill the areas, and then I have more success with doing this than I do with using the UVs. So it's just my thing. I'll turn that off. This happens to be my color layer, and if you'll notice here where the layer itself, I have it as a multiply. If I go back and I turn that to normal, you see it's just straight blue. Now the reason for that is, I'm going to turn this off. This is the texture layer, and you see all this texturing that's been done on a fuselage. Now if I want to pick that up and not completely destroy that, the easiest way to do that is to come in and do your fill. Take all your parts. This would be normal fill. Let me turn, sorry about that. Let me turn this guy off, background off. This is just straight color that I used by selecting the parts that I needed to, and then going in and filling in the color. This is my color change template. If I want to go in and make it pink or turquoise or something like that, I can just select all these pieces, make a color layer like I've done here in the blue, put it over the top of the background, which is the white background. Some aircraft don't come with this, so it doesn't matter in that case. But anyways, this one does, and then like I said, I've assigned that layer to multiply, and the color has picked up all the different shades that was in those textures. Now at this point, I would have a completely shiny aircraft, because the comp file for this is set up to give you a clear coated or nice shiny paint job. So how do you get the dust overlay on it? So what I've done is I've gone in, you can barely see it here. I have two layers, so I'm going to turn this top one off. All this is is a complete, I took the whole entire plate and added a 20% fill of, and I'm going to do this for you so that you can write these numbers down. If I go here to the white and I go and select the coloring, these are the numbers here that I use for the gray. There's various shades here. If you can pick up, go into any one of the white aircraft and you can pick up the shade of gray that they use to get a true white in game. Some of the white that you see is just kind of off base because it's not true to how it's supposed to show up in RGB or in game. So this is what I use, and again, I'll leave this up here for a second if you want to write down these numbers. Again, all this is a layer. I just put a layer above the base layer. Make sure that it's the same. If you're working on a plate that's 4096 by 4096, make sure that this is the same as what's going to be added to your aircraft. Show you why here in a minute. Okay, everybody should have got these numbers by now. I'm going to turn this off. The next plate above that is a gradient feed, and I'll turn this on so maybe you'll see it a little bit better. And basically what I've done is I've taken each part of the fuselage from the tail and done a gradient fill of that 20% white on a separate plate up to where I think it should be on the fuselage. You can play around with it. It's a lot of experimentation at this point to get it right. And every aircraft is going to be different depending on what you're working on. So, but that, just to make the point, that's what I've done here, is just done a gradient fill. Let's see, it's really difficult here to see there. I've got both of them in place now. This is the combination of that dust-based, actually I've got 10% on this one, so 10%, some of them I've done 20%. It depends on the color as to how it shows up. On the Anov's yellow and black Husky, or Mall, I had to use a 20% because over the yellow you could hardly see the dust. Anyways, it's an experimenting process. So you can see here I had to come in and do a little bit on the doors because the doors on the Mall go quite a ways back on the fuselage. So, but this is a combination of that entire plate being 10% and then the gradient fill on a second plate above that. What I'll do at this point, I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to take and select the top on, and this is how it works in Photoshop. It might work differently in GIMP or some other 2D program, but I'm going to go Control E, and that's going to give me a combination of those two layers. I basically merged the layers together, and I'm going to go up here and going to go select all and edit. Copy, and if you're a power user, know how to use the key combinations to do that, you can do that. But I've copied this. I'm going to go over here to that setup that I made for my color change, and I'm on my blue. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go edit, paste special, paste in place. Now you see what it's done to the blue. It's darkened, it's lightened it all up where all the dust treatment is off. If I turn that off, I get nice blue. Let's turn, let's see, I'll go down here to the blue and I'm going to turn off the multiply, go back to normal. So now I'm a solid blue, and if I turn that layer on, you see how it dulls that blue down? And that's the effect that I'm after. Now you have to remember that depending on the aircraft, certain aircraft have 2 or 3 different plates that handle the landing gear, like the tail wheel assembly, stuff like that. Various different assemblies that you have to also do this dust effect to, because you might end with your fuselage and your wing looks great, but your landing gear is all nice and shiny because it's on a separate plate that you didn't do that to. But anyways, that's the process. On some aircraft, in particular the Mall, that has, let's see if I can go back here, this livery up here, the black, that's on a decal. And how that decal is handled is shown right here. This is the decal plate, and what I had to do was I had to go in and I had to select out my parts for the decal, add in that 10% or whatever I'm using to cover up that that decal across there. Let's see, can I zoom in? Yeah, zoom in. And then if I turn off the black, yeah, each one of these I've got 20%. I'll turn that back on. I did the dust path. Now you're only going to get half of that, but what I did was I did the dust on the wing first. I copied my vortex generators, and I did a copy paste in place on the wing template, and then I placed this gray or the dust path, and then I came back and I took that same set that was on a separate layer, and I just brought it in and placed it over on top the decal in the right place. So that's what you're looking at. Those are the vortex generators, extra dust. Now, if I go back up here, there's a couple of areas over the landing light window and over the I believe it's the stall warning fixture that you've got to treat differently, and it took me a little bit to get these lined up in the right place, but it's doable. It just takes some time and figuring things out and looking at your model, looking at the decal and the UVs on it and seeing what's going on, and a little bit of experimentation, and you can figure it out, and you can figure out the placement of where things go. So that's basically what that is. And then there's another strip on the back, the bottom edge of the wing is what this strip is up here, and I had to do the same thing to get the dust levels. On the actual wing, I didn't put a copy in here of the actual wing, but on the actual wing, I added another 10% to the bottom of the wing, because if you think about it, the bottom of that wing is going to pick up a lot of dust coming off the wheels and tires and stuff. So I just added a little bit more dust to it. To me, it looked right to have more dust on the bottom than it's on the top. And if you're sitting in that cockpit, you're going to be looking out at that wing, and you're going to see that. So same way with the struts. They're probably going to have a little bit more dust on the struts, but hopefully you can see the process. I got quite a few layers here just on the decal. Here was the template that I made to get my parts for the, and it shows me where all those parts are for the decal. So I'll turn that off. This was vortex generator decal, the template that I used in order to transfer back and forth between the wing and to the decal. On some aircraft, it's a lot of trouble, but if you want to do that kind of thing, and I could, if I really wanted to play around with this, let's see, let me get the right thing here. That's the generators. There's the dust path. If I wanted to take this dust path, I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to go Control T, and I could go up here to Image. I'll go down here to let's see, not Image, Edit. I'll go down to Transform, and I'll go down to Warp. Now, if you go into the warp, I can actually take and stretch these out in a couple places, like so. Maybe reduce them here. Watch that I don't twist them off so they don't look not right, and maybe come in and adjust these down a little bit. So, see, you can change and make them look a little different or off or something like you might actually see on a real wing. So, all these little things may add to the reality, or it could destroy it from the reality. But just remember that if you do this onto the decal, you need to copy this and transfer it over the wing, because you need to have that same path on the wing, because this above this dark gray here that's on the bottom, anything above that you're not going to see because it's not part of the decal, it's part of the wing. So hopefully that will help you out to and get you going in the right path on that. Like I said, most of this is done in Photoshop or in whatever you're using as a 2D. If you're able to do this process, I would say that GIMP is probably your best bet, going into GIMP and using that as the closest freeware program. I've messed around a little bit with a couple other programs like Krita. Krita seems to be used by a lot of people. It's a little more difficult to do this in Krita. I think you can do this also in Paint.net. The process is a little bit different. You have to experiment with that and figure out how those tools work out, because they're in different places, they work differently. That if that's your program, then that's what you need to figure out how to do if you're going to do this type of thing. Anyways, I hope that shows you on the parts for the fuselage and the wing what I do to build up to get that dust. Wheels. These are the wheels for the mall. This center section here that looks like it's the sidewall of the tire is not. This is actually on the mall. This is the tread pattern. It has nothing to do with the sidewalls. If you see all the four here, these are the actual sides of the tires. And so this is nothing more than coming in with various brushes and building up your textures in different shades of gray. And that's how I built that up. Same process that I used earlier in the other video for building up the mud. You just need to make your pack, go in and into Blender or whatever, and select your parts, or if the UVs are supplied for you, you can use the UVs to use as a part selection and go in and select out those parts and figure it out. Personally, I like to go into Blender. I like to use the bucket fill, identify the parts that I'm going to be painting, and I'll color code them with pink and orange and whatever, and then use those as my plates, as I've done, let's see, here. So these are different parts here, and a couple of them I have labeled differently. These two orange pieces here are actually in the front of the cowling on the nose, and so that identifies for me. The blue is some edging, I think, is around the doors or something. So, or the cowling. Anyway, I hope you can understand that. You should be able, if you're trying to do this kind of detail level and not just simply paint a livery, you're probably up to par with knowing how to use Blender and knowing how to use your 2D programs to achieve the effects you're trying. I think I've showed you everything. Let me go back through. These are the wheels. All right, now some people will do a complete new livery. I like to add liveries into whatever I'm doing. If I've got, like, say in the case here, old blue, I've got floats, skis, wheels. I have the Tundra, and those are all with the standard color and shininess and so forth. And then I've got a texture file down here that handles all of the textures for all of those liveries, and it's just a matter of going into the aircraft file and pointing towards the texture folder for that, and again in the actual texture CFG file, your callbacks, here's that texture folder that's outside of this, and you should understand this, what the dot and dashes mean. This is just telling it that it has to go up out of the folder it's in and go look for this outside of where this is at. And again, I think if you're at this level, you should already know how to do that type of thing. What I basically do is, now I have, this is my Tundra Alkali and this is my Tundra Mud. So basically all I've done is taken the Tundra and I've moved it down, copy here, and then I go in and I rename this to, like I've done here, Alkali and Tundra Mud. And then since these are going to handle the different textures, now you have to go in and you have to add a texture folder in here, and you have to add all the textures that you're going to be using. Now, let me show you I didn't talk about this, I think, earlier in the film, or yeah, in the early. You can see here this is the comp file, and all I've done, and this happens to be the Husky. So if this fade or gradient fill here of this pink looks familiar, that is all I did. Was I took the gray plate that I pulled into to do my color change, so I have my gradient fill in all this stuff. I brought it into my comp file, and I gave it, I used it as a image adjustment, and used the hue saturation to adjust the levels to get a lighter shade of pink, to reduce the amount of reflectivity that would be on that aircraft shininess. You're going to have to do that. What's also not shown here, well, it's actually part of that gradient fill. There's two layers that's involved in this. The first one was the overall 10% or 20% reduction, whatever you're doing, and then that layer of the gradient fill added to that, so the total of that is actually incorporated into this comp file. So I hope you understand that. If you don't do this, you end up with a real shiny, dull, or kind of a combination between a dark color and a light color, and it doesn't look anything like dust. It's just super shiny. So you have to do both the livery, the fuselage or component color texture along with the comp. So I hope you can understand that. Anyways, I think we're done with that. Back to my explanation here. And then once I've got all my textures in to that additional folder, and I've named it to what I wanted to, then you have to go in and make sure that you've got the right callbacks here in your aircraft CFG file. And again, this should be pretty close to the same. I don't think I made any extra changes here because it already knows that it's got to use these textures, and then it goes to the old blue to get the textures that's not here, and then any textures it can't find, then it goes outside of the folder and goes to the Husky to find common stuff and things like that. So if you're familiar with setting up your own liveries, then you understand what these fallbacks do. So then the only thing left to do in this case, when you've added your extra two variants, in this case I have the Alkali and I have the Tundra Mud, is to go back up, and I use this MFS layout generator, and all you have to do is just grab your layout JCN and move it down on top of that, and boom, that is now incorporated. So if I go back, it's now picked up this copy, so that would be included in my my set when I open up Flight Simulator. But the problem I might have with this particular setup is it might conflict because all the names are the same inside of here. So don't do this until you actually make those changes into the aircraft CFG file and the texture CFG file. So I'm going to delete this since I don't want this in there, and I'll just go back out and rerun this JCN, and it should fix everything back to the way it should be. But that way you have, I know for a fact, let's see, where was I here? I know for a fact that I'm not going to be flying floats in the dusty area. I'm not going to be running my skis or my small wheels. I might run my small wheels, in which case you'd have to do another set for the small wheels, so you understand what's going on here, because it's got its own model file, and so you'd have to make a complete another set that says Old Blue Small Wheels Alkali or Small Wheels Mud, and put it in the same folder with its own textures. So anyway, I hope that all helps. Give you an idea of how to do the dust. I'm actually done here. I can close out most of this stuff, and I wish you luck, and I hope this helps someone. Okay, later.